Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharini. So as you know, we'll be celebrating Swami Vivekananda's birthday in our small way. So since everybody likes a few songs, so I've just tried to make a mixture. You know, in Bengali they say that there is a word called Giti Alekho. So there we have some narration, and based on that narration we have some songs. So I've tried to arrange it on some incidents of Swami Vivekananda's life. So let's start. You just tilt it a little towards the screen, little. Because it's not moving, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So Swami Vivekananda, as we all know, was not an ordinary person. These people like him, Sri Ramakrishna describes as ever perfect. They are ever perfect souls, means even before their birth they have attained perfection, means they are fully aware of their divinity, and their only work in the world is to help others also attain perfection. So they don't come with any worldly motive, or they don't come being forced by their own karma. They are special messengers brought to the earth either by circumstances or by God Himself, like Swami Vivekananda was, to achieve a special mission. That special mission is generally leading man towards God. Their methods may differ in every age, but that is the essence. That making us aware of the real aim of our lives and helping us achieve that aim, which is we can call spiritual progress or attaining God or realizing our own divine nature. It's all the same thing. So these persons are called Adhikarika Purushas also. They are born with some special adhikara or powers, and we know that Swami Vivekananda from his very birth exhibited unusual powers. So Sri Ramakrishna himself said that he is a repository of so many powers that he can shake the world. So one reminiscence of Swami Vivekananda, which is exceptionally wonderful, it's a very lengthy reminiscence of his disciple, Sister Christine. There she beautifully describes that why and how Swami Vivekananda, people like Swami Vivekananda come into this world. So I will just quote just a few paragraphs from her reminiscences. These are exceptional. She's put it in an exceptionally wonderful way. So I quote from Sister Christine. She begins her reminiscence of Swami Vivekananda in this way. Now and then, at long intervals of time, a being finds his way to this planet who is unquestionably a wanderer from another sphere, who brings with him to this sorrowful world some of the glory, the power, the radiance of the far distant region from which he came. He shares the life of those about him, enters into their joys and sorrows, rejoices with them, mourns with them, but through it all, he never forgets who he is. whence he came or what the purpose of his coming is. He never forgets his divinity. He remembers that he is the great, the glorious, the majestic self. He knows that he came from that ineffable supernal region which has no need of the sun or moon, for it is illumined by the light of lights. Such a being is beyond all comparison, for he transcends all ordinary standards and ideals. Others may be brilliant, but his mind is luminous, for he has the power to put himself into immediate contact with the source of all knowledge. Others may be great, they are great only as compared with those in their own class. Others may be good, powerful, gifted, having more of goodness, more of power, more of genius than their fellow men. It is only a matter of comparison. A saint is more holy, more pure, more single-minded than ordinary men. But with Swami Vivekananda, there could be no comparison. He was in a class by himself. He belonged to another order. He was not of this world. He was a radiant being who had descended from another, a higher sphere for a definite purpose. Blessed is the country in which he was born. Blessed are they who lived on this earth at the same time. And blessed, thrice blessed, are the few who sat at his feet. So just a few lines from this extraordinary reminiscence by Sister Christine. So Swami Vivekananda's real nature has been beautifully described in a Sanskrit hymn composed by Swami Ramakrishnananda. So before singing that hymn, I will just explain the meaning a little. It is in Sanskrit. So the first words begin like this: Anitya drishyeshu vivichya nityam tasmin samadhatta ihasma leelaya viveka vairagya vishuddha chittam yosau viveki tam aham namami. So anitya and nitya, vivichya nityam. Vivichya means to do, vivek means to discriminate between the anitya and nitya, that is the real, eternal and the ephemeral. So what could Swami Vivekananda do? He could discriminate between these two very easily, and Leelaya tasmin samadhatta. Leelaya means just in play, without any effort. He could go into samadhi by immersing his mind in the real. So one who was like this, Yosau Viveki, one who was discriminating like this, I bow down to. Viveka Jananda Nimagna Chittam, Viveka Danaika Vinoda Sheelam, Viveka Bhasa Kamaniya Kantim, Vivekinam Tam Satatam Namami. So, Viveka Ja, Ananda Nimagna Chittam. So, I bow down to that discriminating sage. Vivekinam Tam Satatam Namami, who was ever merged in the bliss born of discrimination, and whose pastime was to bestow the power of discrimination on others, and who shone with the effulgence which the power of discrimination had bestowed on him. Ritam cha vijnana madhishrayadyan nirantaram chadi madhyantahinam Sukham surupam prakaroti yasya anandamurtim tamaham namami. I bow to that boundless embodied bliss who was the repository of truth and knowledge and who scattered joy and beauty wherever he went. Suryo yatha andham hi tamo nihanti, Vishnur yatha dushta janang chinatti, tathaiva yasya khila netra lobham, rupam tritapam vimukhi karoti. Just as the sun dispels darkness, just as Lord Vishnu destroys the wicked, so his enchanting personality destroys the threefold misery of man. Tam deshikendram paramam pavitram vishwasya palam maduram yatindram hitaya nrinam naramurti mantam viveka anandamaham namami. I salute Vivekananda, the great sannyasin and teacher, the supremely pure one, who was honored by the whole world and who incarnated himself for the good of mankind. So let's hear this beautiful hymn.
Tamo niha
विष्णुर्यथा दुष्टजनां क्षिरति तथैव यस्याखिलनेत्रलोभं रूपं त्रितापं विमुखीकरोति रूपं त्रितापं विमुखीकरोति तं देशिकेन्द्रं परमं पवित्रं विश्वस्य पारं मधुरं यतीन्द्रं हिताय नृणां नरमूर्तिमन्तं विवेकानन्दमहं नमामि विवेकानन्दमहं नमामि नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने So this was the hymn written by Swami Ramakrishnananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, in Madras in 1911. So as we have discussed that Swami Vivekananda, people like Swami Vivekananda are brought down to earth by God's power. So here also, in this case of Swamiji also, he was brought down to the earth by God himself, that is Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna himself, we are very lucky that Sri Ramakrishna himself describes how Swami Vivekananda, who was one of the 7 divine rishis, was brought down to the earth by a divine being. So who this divine being was also Sri Ramakrishna tells us later. So this wonderful vision Sri Ramakrishna describes in this way. One day I found that my mind was soaring high in samadhi along a luminous path. It soon transcended the stellar universe and entered the subtle realm of ideas. As it ascended higher and higher, I found the path lined with ideal forms of gods and goddesses on both sides. My mind then reached the outer limits of that region, where a luminous barrier separates the sphere of relative existence from that of the Absolute. My mind crossed that barrier to enter the transcendental realm, where no corporeal being was visible. Even the gods dare not enter that subtle realm and are content to keep their seats far below. But the next moment I saw 7 venerable rishis seated there in samadhi. it occurred to me that these rishis must have surpassed not only humans but even the gods in knowledge and holiness, in renunciation and love. Lost in admiration, I was reflecting on their greatness when I saw a portion of that undifferentiated luminous region condensed into the form of a divine child. The child came to one of the rishis, tenderly clasped his neck with his lovely arms, and, addressing him in a sweet voice, tried to drag his mind down from the state of samadhi. That magic touch roused the rishi from the superconscious state, and he fixed his half-opened eyes upon the wonderful child. His beaming countenance showed that the child was the treasure of his heart. In great joy, the divine child spoke to him, "I am going down. You must go with me." The rishi remained mute, but his tender look expressed his assent. As he gazed at the child, he again became immersed in samadhi. I was surprised to see a fragment of his body and mind then descending to earth in the form of a bright light. No sooner I had seen Narendra than I recognized him to be that rishi. So this is the wonderful vision which Sri Ramakrishna had. And later he mentioned that the divine child was none other than himself. He himself had brought Swamiji. Just give me the laptop one second. Give me the whole thing. Lift it up. 1 second. See the mood here. Yeah, it is okay. Music now. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So this was who Swami Vivekananda was in reality. So I will just sing a song which describes this, that Swami Vivekananda was none other than one of the 7 rishis. This is a new song. It is in Bengali, but I will just explain the meaning first. First line tells who Swami Vivekananda was. Mahan Rishi ele akhondo ghar hote. The great Rishi came down from the region of the Absolute, whose name was Vivekananda. And then it says, then it prays to Swamiji that, "O Swamiji, please give all the people of the world divine love, because you are a great yogi and you have a very tender heart. And you gave up your life for the good of all, and you even gave up the bliss of samadhi to do good to others. You gave up all the pleasures of the world, not only that, but you also gave up the bliss of samadhi. You are Thakur's divine companion, and you spread his message from in various countries, traveling to various countries. So please make us fearless and may the sun of discrimination shine in our lives also." This is in brief the meaning of this song. কত তোমারি শরণাগত, কত কত শত শত ভীত চকিত নরনারী। বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী মহান ঋষি এলে অখণ্ড ঘর হতে, বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী। বিশ্ব মানবে দাও প্রেম করুণা ঘন, হে মহাযোগী উদার তব মন। বিশ্ব মানবে দাও প্রেম করুণা ঘন, হে মহাযোগী উদার তব মন। জীবের সেবায় তুমি করেছ জীবন দান, জীবের সেবায় তুমি করেছ জীবন দান। কে তব সমহিতকারী, বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী। হে ধ্যান মগ্ন বৈদিক বসন, ত্যাগ করেছ তুমি কামিনী কাঞ্চন। হে ধ্যান মগ্ন বৈদিক বসন, ত্যাগ করেছ তুমি কামিনী কাঞ্চন। ঠাকুরের সারথি চলেছ দ্রুত গতি, ঠাকুরের সারথি চলেছ দ্রুত গতি। দেশ দেশান্তরে ঘুরি মানবে করে দাও নির্ভয় দুর্জয়। ভারত মাতার হোক জয় 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 জয়, মানবে করে দাও নির্ভয় দুর্জয়। ভারত মাতার হোক জয় 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 জয়। বিবেক সূর্য উঠুক তুর্য বাজায়, বিবেক সূর্য উঠুক তুর্য বাজায়। হে দেশ মাতার পূজারী, বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী। মহান ঋষি এলে অখণ্ড ঘর হতে, মহান ঋষি এলে অখণ্ড ঘর হতে, বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী। তোমারি শরণাগত শত শত কত কত, তোমারি শরণাগত শত শত কত কত ভীত চকিত নরনারী। বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী মহান ঋষি এলে অখণ্ড ঘর হতে, বিবেকানন্দ নামধারী। This has been recently written by Swami, whose songs I have sung before also, and she sent it to me. So those who have studied Swamiji's life will see that again and again Swami Vivekananda has been compared with Lord Shiva. Shiva, the great god, Hindu trinity of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiv. So again and again Swamiji has been compared with Lord Shiva, and this association with Shiva of Swami Vivekananda started even before he was born. So what happened was, his mother Bhuvaneshwari Devi, praying to God for a son, wrote to an old aunt of the Datta family in Varanasi. Varanasi is the place of Vireshwar Shiva, we know of the divine visions which Sri Ramakrishna had in Varanasi. He saw that the whole city was as it were made of gold and that Shiva resided there eternally. So Shiva is specially manifest in Varanasi. So Bhuvaneshwari Devi, Swami Vivekananda's mother, wrote to an old aunt of her family in Varanasi asking her to make the necessary offerings and prayer to Vireshwar Shiva there so that a son might be born to her. So it was arranged that on Mondays the aunt would offer worship to Vireshwar Shiva while Bhuvaneshwari Devi would practice special austerities on those days, that is on Mondays. So this was carried on for quite a few days and one night Bhuvaneshwari Devi had a vivid dream. She had spent the day in the shrine and as evening deepened into night, she fell asleep. The household was hushed in silence and rest. Then in the highest heavens, the hours struck the time which had come for the pious woman to receive the special grace of the Lord. In her dream, she saw the Lord Shiva rouse himself from his meditation and take the form of a male child who was to be her son. So, by the special grace of Shiva, Swami Vivekananda was born. And about his childhood, one incident is there that even when he was a little child, the ochre cloth exercised upon him such a spell that he would give away everything he could lay hands on when a holy man came into the courtyard of his family. So everything, even when they locked up in a room, he would throw things out of the window. His family would lock him up when one of these men appeared. Then he would throw things out of the window. There were times when he would sit in meditation until he was lost to all outer consciousness. But the other side was there too. When he was so naughty that his mother would hold him under the tap saying, "I asked Shiva for a son and he has sent me one of his demons." So this was the thing. So Swamiji was compared to either Shiva or one of his demons. And another comparison to Shiva is there in the reminiscence of Swami Turiyananda. He says once, who was as sattvika as Swami Vivekananda. My impression of him is not derived from hearsay, but from constant companionship and ocular evidence. I have seen him sitting at meditation at 9 in the evening, quite insensible to the bitter stings of swarms of mosquitoes, and rising from meditation at 5 in the morning to take an early bath. It seemed as if Shiva himself was meditating, so deeply absorbed and unconscious of the external world he would be. And another reminiscence of Swami Shivananda, this is a wonderful vision which Swami Shivananda had in Baranagar Mutt. Baranagar Mutt, after Sri Ramakrishna passed away, that was the first mutt of the Ramakrishna order. So Swami Shivananda ji describes his vision in this way. Well, a very strange phenomenon occurred while living with Swamiji. This was at the garden house of Kashipur, not at Baranagar, at Kashipur when Sri Ramakrishna was ill, while living with Swamiji at the garden house of Kashipur. In those days, we all slept together side by side in a room downstairs, for we had no beddings worth mentioning. We had a big mosquito curtain which we put up and all took shelter under it. One night I slept near Swamiji. There were Swami Ramakrishnananda and some others as well. Suddenly I woke up to find the inside of the whole curtain flooded with a brilliant light. Swamiji had been by my side, but now I could not find him there. Instead, there slept a number of Shivas, all of them about 7 or 8 years old, white in color and their heads covered with matted hair. It was the light emanating from their bodies that lit up the place. As I looked on, I was dumbfounded at the sight. I could not understand anything at first. I thought it was a hallucination. So I rubbed my eyes and again looked. There slept the Shivas, sure enough, just as before. So I was in a fix and sat up with wonder. I did not lie down again. Besides, I was afraid that I might touch them with my feet unconsciously during my sleep. So I spent the whole night in meditation. When the day dawned, I found Swamiji sleeping just as before. When I told him everything, he laughed heartily. Means Swamiji just brushed off the incident, he did not give any importance to that. But long afterwards, while reading a hymn to Vireshwara Shiva, I discovered a mantra about meditation on him that coincided with my vision. And then I knew that my vision was quite true. Swamiji was nothing but that in reality. He was born as a part of Shiva, and that is why I saw like that. So, next we will have a Sanskrit hymn composed by Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, one of Swami Vivekananda's disciple. And the very first line is just reinstates this fact. The very first two words says that Murta Maheshwara. Murta Maheshwara means one who was Shiva embodied in a human form. Shiva in a human form. So, Murta Maheshwaram Ujjvala Bhaskaram Ishtam Amara Nara Vandyam. I bow down to Vivekananda, my spiritual guide and object of worship, who is Lord Shiva incarnate, resplendent like the bright sun, Bhaskaram, adored by men and gods alike. Nara Amara Vandyam. Vande Ved Tanum Ujjita Garhita Kamana Kama Kanchana Bandham. The embodiment of the Vedas who has completely overcome the bondage of sense pleasures. Koti Bhanukara Deepta Singha Maho Katitata Kaupina Vantam. Millions of sun rays, a lion amongst men, brilliant like the rays of a million suns, who has nothing but the sannyasin's loincloth on. And Abhi Abhi Hunkara Nadita Dingmukha Prachanda Tandava Nrityam. He dances Shiva's frantic dance, reverberating all around with his impassioned call that Abhi Abhi. Abhi Abhi means fear not, fear not. So this is the hymn. I am sure many of you have heard it before. कोटि भानुकर दीप्त सिंहमहो कटितट कौपीनवन्तम् कोटि भानुकर दीप्त सिंहमहो कटितट कौपीनवन्तम् अभिरभिहुङ्कारनादित मुख प्रचण्ड ताण्डव नृत्यम् अभिरभिहुङ्कारनादित मुख प्रचण्ड ताण्डव नृत्यम् मूर्तमहेश्वरमुज्ज्वल भास्करम् इष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् भुक्ति कृपा कटाक्ष प्रेक्षणम् अघदल विदलन दक्षम् मुक्ति कृपा कटाक्ष प्रेक्षणम् अघदल विदलन दक्षम् बालचन्द्रधरमिन्दु वन्द्यमिह नौमि गुरु विवेकानन्दम् बालचन्द्रधरमिन्दु वन्द्यमिह नौमि गुरु विवेकानन्दम् मूर्तमहेश्वरमुज्ज्वल भास्करम् इष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् वन्दे वेदतनुमुज्जित गर्हित काञ्चन कामिनि बन्धम् मूर्तमहेश्वरमुज्ज्वल भास्करम् इष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् So this was the song which said that, emphasized that Swami Vivekananda was Shiva himself embodied in human form, as it were. And as soon as Vivekananda was Naren that time, as soon as he was even a little old, when he was even a student, we know that he had gone to Sri Ramakrishna and thus began Naren's training under the master. So about Sri Ramakrishna and his relationship with Swami Vivekananda, Sister Nivedita says in these beautiful words, I quote Sister Nivedita, in his master Ramakrishna Paramahansa, living and teaching in the temple garden at Dakshineshwar, Swami Vivekananda, Naren as he then was, found that verification of ancient texts which his heart and his reason had demanded. Here was the reality which the books only brokenly described. Here was one to whom Samadhi was a constant mode of knowledge. Every hour saw the swing of the mind from the many to the one. Every moment heard the utterance of wisdom gathered superconsciously. Everyone about him caught the vision of the divine. Upon the disciple came the desire for supreme knowledge, as if it had been a fever. Yet, he who was thus the living embodiment of the books was so unconsciously, for he had read none of them. Though Sri Ramakrishna had not read all these scriptures, Still, he was the embodiment of all the scriptures. In his Guru, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Vivekananda found the key to life. So, Swami Vivekananda, in praise of the Master, he wrote a hymn. I am sure you must have all heard it before. That is Naradeva Deva Jaya Jaya Naradeva. So I will just like to sing that. I'll just narrate the meaning of that song. It begins with Achandala Pratihatarayo. So he whose love flowed freely to all, down to even the meanest of the human beings. Although transcending the world, he never gave up working for the good of the world. He whose greatness is unmatched in the three worlds, he who was Sita's beloved companion, whose knowledge was covered by Sita's devotional nature, that Sri Rama. And then again Sri Krishna, he who as Krishna quelled the noise, terrible like that at the time of destruction, arising from the battle of Kurukshetra, who destroyed the terrible yet natural night of ignorance of Arjuna, and who roared out the Gita, sweet and appeasing. So that soul who was born earlier as Rama and Krishna is born now as Sri Ramakrishna. Then he says, I surrender myself to my Guru, the physician for the malady of samsara, who is, as it were, a wave rising in the ocean of Shakti, who has shown various sports of Lord Divine, and who is a great weapon to destroy the demon of doubt. I surrender myself to my Guru, the physician for the malady of this samsara, Bhava Vaidyam, whose mind ever dwelt on the non-dualistic truth, Advaya Tattva Samahita Chitta, whose personality was covered by the cloth of supreme devotion, Projjwala Bhakti Patavrita Vrittam, who was ever active for the good of humanity and whose actions were superhuman. Karma Kalevaram Adbhuta Cheshta. So this beautiful hymn, I'll just try to present before you. Just see that it does not fall down. Just see that it does not fall down. Achandala Pratihatarayo Yasya Prema Pravaha Lokatito Vyahanajaho Lokakalyanam Trailokyepya Pratima Mahima Janaki Pranabandho Bhaktya Jnanam Vritavaravakuhu Sitaya Yodhirama सिंहनादं जगर्ज सोऽयं जातः प्रथितपुरुषो So thus we know how Swami Vivekananda was then trained under Sri Ramakrishna, and even when he was young, learning at the feet of his master, Sri Ramakrishna had said that Narendranath would teach the world. Nobody understood the significance of that utterance because it was too early then. Narendra was then known as just one of the Calcutta boys, and none could think that such greatness could be hidden in that young man. But Sri Ramakrishna had a great prophetic vision. He knew the greatness hidden in the life of his beloved Narendranath. So even in his very young age, Swami Vivekananda exhibited extraordinary powers. He never forgot what he heard even once, even when he was a student. So once there is an incident that there was a tutor assigned to him, he had come to teach Narendranath. So the tutor saw that when he started teaching, Narendra would just lie down and close his eyes. Every time that happened. So one day the tutor got very angry that I am teaching and this fellow is lying down. And so then when it happened more than once, then once he scolded Narendranath, what is this? I am teaching you and you are lying down. So Swami, the future Swami Vivekananda, he got up and whatever the teacher had said, he repeated everything verbatim. So actually, he was in a deep state of deep meditation when he lay down, and everything the teacher said he could repeat as he had heard it. This was Swami Vivekananda. That is why about him, Professor John Henry Wright had said, when introducing Swami Vivekananda to the organizers of the Parliament of Religion, Professor John Henry Wright had said, here is a man who is more learned than all our learned professors put together. That is why Sri Ramakrishna had specially chosen his Naren from amongst all the young men who had come to him to be the leader of a great movement that was to follow after his demise. And Narendranath, in course of time, made it a determined resolve to dedicate his life for the great work that the Master wanted him to take up. But he had to undergo a lot of training before that. And one of the things which Sri Ramakrishna had wanted to teach him specially was he should accept the Divine Mother. So once what happened that Narendra's family was suffering terribly. They had hardly enough to eat, no job. So Swamiji, then Narendra went to Sri Ramakrishna and told him that, please pray to the Divine Mother. Divine Mother hears your prayers. I don't accept her, so if I pray, nothing will happen. So you please pray that my family should not lack basic food and clothing. So Master said, why don't you go and pray yourself? Because you don't accept the Divine Mother, all this is happening. You pray, and I guarantee that whatever you pray today, that will be granted. So Narendranath went, but after all, he was the future Swami Vivekananda. So when he went, he could not see an image. He saw the living Divine Mother. And then he thought, what have I come to pray for? Food and clothing. These are such ordinary things. So he could only pray for love and devotion, and then he came back. He completely forgot all about other things. So Sri Ramakrishna said, what happened? Did you pray? Then he said, oh my God, I forgot. So Ramakrishna again sent him. Again the same thing happened. When he entered, he saw the living mother and he forgot everything. Then Sri Ramakrishna sent him again. Third time the same thing happened. So Narendra said, it is all your Maya. You have to do something. So Sri Ramakrishna said, okay, your family will not lack food and clothing. So Sri Ramakrishna gave him that boon. So on that day, Narendra accepted the Divine Mother. And Sri Ramakrishna was greatly pleased. So one person who had gone to Dakshineshwar, who was fortunate enough to go to Dakshineshwar that day, he said in his reminiscence that the Master was seated alone in his room and Narendra was sleeping on the veranda outside. The Master was beaming with joy. As soon as I bowed down to him, he pointed to Narendra and said, look at that boy. That boy is very good. His name is Narendra. He wouldn't accept the Divine Mother before, but last night he did. He was in need of money, so I advised him to ask Mother for it. But he couldn't do so. He said he felt ashamed. When he came back from the temple, he asked me to teach him a song in praise of Mother. So I taught him a song. And he sang it all night long. That is why he is sleeping now. So this was the first song that Sri Ramakrishna taught Swamiji. which I will present before you now. That song, the meaning I'll just tell. Mother, thou art our soul redeemer. Thou art the support of the three gunas, higher than the Most High. Thou art compassionate, I know, who takest away our bitter grief. Thou art in earth, in water. Thou art at the root of all, in me, in every creature. Though thou art the formless reality, still thou art clothed with form. Thou art the Sandhya and the Gayatri. Thou dost sustain this universe. Mother, of those who have no other help, thou art the help. And Mother, you are the eternal beloved of Shiva. This is the song. the last part where Swamiji went to Chicago at the Parliament of Religions, and we all know what happened after that. So Swami Vivekananda at the Parliament of Religions, this has been beautifully described. This meeting of the East and West has been beautifully described by Sister Nivedita as only she could. That Swami Vivekananda is on the stage, standing before his audience for the first time. So just see what she says, just beautiful language. That moment she is describing. The moment was ripe with this potentiality. The vast audience that faced him represented exclusively the Occidental mind, but included some development of all that in this was distinctive. Every nation in Europe has poured in its human contribution upon America, and notably upon Chicago, where the Parliament was held. Much of the best as well as some of the worst of modern effort and struggle is at all times to be met with within the frontiers of that Western civic queen, whose feet are upon the shores of Lake Michigan, as she sits and broods with the light of the north in her eyes. There is very little in the modern consciousness, very little inherited from the past of Europe, that does not hold some outpost in the city of Chicago. Such was the psychological area, such the sea of mind, young, overflowing with its own energy and self-assurance, yet inquisitive and alert withal, which confronted Vivekananda when he rose to speak. Behind him, on the contrary, lay an ocean, calm with long ages of spiritual development. Behind him lay a world that dated itself from the Vedas and remembered itself in the Upanishads. A world to which Buddhism was almost modern. A world that was filled with religious systems of faiths and creeds. A quiet land steeped in the sunlight of the tropics, the dust of whose roads had been trodden by the feet of the saints for ages and ages. Behind him, in short, lay India, with her thousands of years of national development, in which she had sounded many things, proved many things, and realized almost all, save only her own perfect unanimity from end to end of her great expanse of time and space, as to certain fundamental and essential truths held by all her people in common. And this was put forward by Swami Vivekananda in the Parliament of Religions. That is why Sister Nivedita says, of the Swami's address before the Parliament of Religions, it may be said that when he began to speak, it was of the religious ideas of the Hindus. But when he ended, Hinduism had been created. Such wonderful words. So, in India as well as outside, Swamiji preached, and for the good of all. So we will have a last song in Hindi on Swami Vivekananda, the great preacher. वीरेश्वर विवेक भास्कर जय जय श्री विवेकानंद जय वीरेश्वर विवेक भास्कर जय जय श्री विवेकानंद इंदु निधानन सुंदर लोचन इंदु निधानन सुंदर लोचन विश्वमानव चिरवन्द्य जय वीरेश्वर विवेक भास्कर जय जय श्री विवेकानंद प्रेम ढल ढल कांति सुविमल अधिकत वेद वेदांत प्रेम ढल ढल कांति सुविमल अधिकत वेद वेदांत त्याग तितीक्षा तपस्या उज्ज्वल त्याग तितीक्षा तपस्या उज्ज्वल चित्त निरमल शांत जय वीरेश्वर विवेक भास्कर जय जय श्री विवेकानंद कर्म भक्ति ज्ञान त्रिशूल धारण छेदन जीव मोहबंध कर्म भक्ति ज्ञान त्रिशूल धारण छेदन जीव मोहबंध ब्रह्म परायण नमो नारायण ब्रह्म परायण नमो नारायण देहि देहि चरणारविंद जय वीरेश्वर विवेक भास्कर जय जय श्री विवेकानंद इंदु निधानन सुंदर लोचन इंदु निधानन सुंदर लोचन विश्वमानव चिरवन्द्य जय वीरेश्वर विवेक भास्कर जय जय श्री विवेकानंद So let's end here today. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu